to counter Russian influence. The US rushes to get advanced air defence missiles to Ukraine, shifting its delivery priorities from other countries. And from MASH to the Hunger Games, a look back on the life and career of Donald Sutherland, who's died aged 88. Good evening. Vietnam has become the focus of escalating diplomatic activity. Days after Russia's president signed a defence pact with the Southeast Asian nation, a top US diplomat is on his way for a visit. His mission is to stress Washington's commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific region. President Vladimir Putin's Asian tour has seen him build support for the war in Ukraine, which has the West and South Korea increasingly concerned. Seoul has tonight summoned the Russian ambassador, angry at Putin's deal with Pyongyang.
President Putin with much to toast to. A successful trip to Vietnam for the Russian leader, who found a renewed friend and partner in Vietnam. His welcome was more subdued than North Korea just days ago, but it wasn't without performance. President To Lam forthcoming in his support for Russia, entering into a similar defence pact as North Korea, which requires both states to offer support in the face of aggression.
Hai bên mong muốn thúc đẩy hợp tác quốc phòng an ninh, ứng phó với những thách thức an ninh phi truyền thống trên cơ sở luật pháp và thông lệ quốc tế, đóng góp cho hòa bình, an ninh ở khu vực và thế giới.
Vietnam has often abstained from picking sides in international disputes. But Putin's visit has been seen as inflammatory by the US, one of Vietnam's top trading partners, and will send a high-level envoy to Vietnam on Friday. Mr. Putin's earlier visit to North Korea also drew criticism. The State Department said the new deal is incredibly concerning and prompted Republican and Democratic senators to introduce a bill declaring Russia a state sponsor of terrorism.
It is time for us to push back. Now is the moment, above all other moments.
In a sign of defiance, the US and South Korea Air Forces held drills over South Korea on Thursday. Seoul going as far to say it would now reconsider sending weapons to Ukraine.
정부는 어제 북한과 러시아가 포괄적인 전략적 동반자 관계에 관한 조약을 체결하여 상호 군사 경제적 협력을 강화하기로 한 데 대해 엄중한 우려를 표하며 이를 규탄한다.
In a parting press conference at Hanoi Airport, President Putin took aim at the West and South Korea.
Те, кто поставляет это оружие, считают, что они с нами не воюют. Ну, я вот и сказал, в том числе и в Пхеньяне, что мы тогда оставляем за собой право поставлять оружие в другие регионы мира. Имея в виду наши договоренности с Корейской Народно-Демократической Республикой, я и этого не исключаю.
Mr. Putin once again raising the stakes, showing the West he's not without allies. Georgia Ma, SBS World News.
It's been revealed the US and China have resumed nuclear arms talks for the first time in 5 years. The semi-official discussions started 3 months ago, with Chinese representatives offering reassurances they won't use or threaten to use nuclear weapons if faced with defeat in a conflict over Taiwan. The Track 2 talks are part of a 2-decade posturing dialogue, stalled after the Trump administration pulled funding in 2019. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited Beijing in April as the two countries try to stabilise relations. The US has pledged that all Patriot missile interceptors produced over the next 16 months will go to Ukraine instead of the countries that ordered them. Washington has also expanded the scope of Ukraine's use of US-supplied weapons against Russian forces.
The aftermath of Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian oil refineries overnight. These in the Tambov and Adygea regions, another in the Krasnodar region, and also in Sevastopol. Russia claims to have destroyed 7 ammunition depots in Ukraine and continues to hit energy infrastructure. Washington scrambling to counter the attacks before winter arrives. The Pentagon giving the green light for Ukraine to use US-supplied weapons anywhere Russian forces attack across the border, not just in the region near Kharkiv. The development coming shortly after this announcement.
The United States government has made the difficult but necessary decision to reprioritize near-term planned deliveries of foreign military sales to other countries of particularly Patriot and NASAM missiles to go to Ukraine instead.
The Patriot battery is the only defence system proven capable of shooting down Russian hypersonic missiles. That makes it top of the wish list for Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky thanking Romania, the latest country to commit its Patriots to the front lines.
Ми зараз здатні перемогти імперські амбіції Росії. І це поверне спокій та впевненість усій нашій Європі. Ми працюємо з командою щодо постачання ще кількох Петріотів.
Norway also stepping in to meet surging global demand for military equipment, unveiling its new weapons manufacturing capabilities.
After the outbreak of the full-scale war in Ukraine, we are in a situation where most Western countries have donated substantially from their own stocks and need to replenish.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is now signalling that he's considering changing Russia's nuclear doctrine. Currently, such weapons can only be used in response to a nuclear attack or in the event of a conventional attack that poses an existential threat. But he told reporters Russia does not need to carry out a preemptive nuclear strike because, quote, in a retaliatory counterstrike, the enemy will be guaranteed to be destroyed. Alexandra Jones, SBS World News.
The outgoing Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte is on track to be formally selected as the next NATO Secretary-General in the coming days. Mr Rutte is seen as a staunch ally of Ukraine and outspoken critic of Vladimir Putin. Under his tenure as the Netherlands' longest-serving Prime Minister, his country ramped up defence spending, providing fighter jets, artillery and drones to Kyiv. His rival for the job, Romanian President Klaus Iohannis, withdrew his bid. Mr Rutte will take over from Jens Stoltenberg, who is stepping down this year after a decade leading the alliance. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has once again criticised the Biden administration, saying it's withholding weapons Israel needs to fight the war against Hamas. The White House has dismissed his comments, describing them as disappointing and perplexing. The diplomatic squabble comes as thousands of Israeli protesters continue to call for fresh elections and a deal to release all hostages held in Gaza.
Outside the Prime Minister's residence, no let-up in public outrage at the continuing conflict. Waving flags, banners and using loud-hailers to amplify their message, more protesters, all demanding the same outcome.
We know that the only way to return the hostages and to start the healing process of this country is to eliminate this racist, messianic, corrupted government that chooses all the time, that chooses their survival over the hostages' survival.
The man at the center of this argument, unrepentant.
אנחנו לא נצא מרצועת עזה עד שלא נחזיר את כל חטופינו, החיים והחללים כאחד. ואנחנו עושים את המשימה הזאת וגם משימות רבות אחרות, שכרגע השתיקה יפה להם.
Benjamin Netanyahu not so silent, with repeated criticism of the Biden administration over arms supplies, quickly countered once again by the White House.
Obviously, we didn't know that video was coming. It was perplexing, to say the least, certainly disappointing, especially given that no other country is doing more to help Israel defend itself against the threat by Hamas. Those comments were deeply disappointing and certainly vexing to us, given the amount of support that we have and will continue to provide Prime Minister Netanyahu.
The conduct of the war in Gaza, increasing tension between the two allies. Israeli airstrikes in the central and northern Gaza Strip continuing into the night with mounting casualties.
وكانت في دار طبعا جنبينا دا يقصفوها وزي ما انتم شايفين شوفوا كيف صفنا متضرر مش عارف احنا وين ننام 25 نفر ساكنين في هذا الصف وشوفوا كيف فراشنا وين ننام مش عارفين وين ننام مضطرين ننام في الساحة.
More bodies being prepared for burial as Israel's military looks to destroy Hamas targets. Some good news for Gaza's embattled population as the US military's temporary pier was back up and running.
First up, I can confirm that U.S. Central Command personnel re-anchored and re-established the temporary pier to the Gaza beach yesterday. As has been the case in the past, Israeli Defense Force engineers provided all the necessary support to ensure the safe emplacement of the pier on the beach. Overnight, the transfer of humanitarian assistance from Cyprus to Gaza resumed with more than 656 metric tons or 1.4 million pounds being delivered to the marshalling yard in Gaza today.
The pier, built at short notice and at a cost of some $350 million, has largely failed in its mission so far, with rough seas and security concerns rendering it inoperable until now. With aid now building up on the ground, aid agencies hope it's only a matter of time before it reaches those in need. Edmund Roy, SBS World News.
Sudan's paramilitary Rapid Support Forces have taken control of a strategically significant city in its long-running war with the Sudanese armed forces. The army was forced to retreat from El Fula, the capital of West Kordofan state. The government says hundreds of thousands of people have been forced to flee. Many of them had already been displaced by fighting elsewhere in the region. It's raised concerns the Rapid Support Forces now have access to the border with South Sudan, as well as key oil fields and power stations. It's been 2 weeks since Papua New Guinea's government called off the search and recovery effort to find anyone still alive in a landslide disaster in the remote highlands. The community there is expecting the process of recovery will take years, and tribal conflicts are amplifying the struggle to deliver aid to thousands of people who have been told to leave their homes due to the unstable ground. Our chief political correspondent, Anna Henderson, has been to the disaster zone and filed this report.
Another aid airlift going up, a sky bridge to those running out of food, isolated on the other side of the landslide, the highway partially destroyed. Those who managed to escape from the danger zone now stranded and reliant on makeshift camps. The impact field feared to be expanding.
You see the crack on the main road? Yeah. So that's been in the last 2 days, so this area is likely to go down as well.
Now the people wait for aid from Australia, China, India and many other nations. Australian ministers flying in to see the place where the earth caved in. Then a briefing in a local school to explain the scale of the recovery.
It's immense, it's indescribable, it's so huge, and we've been able to manage it with the partners.
It's hard to describe the feeling when you actually see the landslide itself, and as you say, the size of the boulders, the devastation that it has given rise to. We are here to help, and the point of us being here today is to understand how we can help more.
This school itself has been affected by the tribal conflict here that's also proved challenging for the aid efforts. At one point, this had to close.
This part of the area has been devastated by law and order, conflict between clans, which is our greatest challenge in this part of the province. And it's been abandoned. But since the disaster, we've been working on this school, we've been working on the health center, and we're trying to revive these places. We bring the warring clans together to broker peace.
The frantic search for the missing went for weeks. Only 13 bodies have been recovered, but local authorities say at least 160 others perished here. Now the site is too dangerous for recovering bodies for traditional burial rites. More than 15,000 people have now been told to leave their homes and villages for fear of further landslips. Concerns for their health rising. Many are injured and disease is starting to spread.
We still a decomposed body, still at how many feet of stones and gravel on top. We don't know. How this decomposed body going to affect the community as well.
Taking away these accounts, along with handcrafted gifts in the colours of Enga province. Expectations high that seeing this for themselves, Australia's government and people will support the years of recovery ahead. Anna Henderson, SBS World News.